Welcome back to What's Your Take? Real talk on leadership and life. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki, the DBA pharmacist and founder of FitBiz Global Solutions. Today's episode is intentional. Leadership constantly rewards speed, quick decisions, rapid response, constant motion. But we rarely talk about the power of pausing. This episode isn't about solutions. It's about slowing down long enough to notice what we've been moving past. Consider this the leadership pause for you and for me. One thing I've learned this season is that patterns don't show up when we are rushing. They surface when we pause long enough to notice them. As I looked back across the conversations and solo reflections, I kept asking, what keeps coming up? Disruption in leadership, in healthcare, in personal growth. Communication, especially when it breaks down or goes unaddressed. Innovation, not as a flash, but as small, intentional shifts that shape outcomes over time. Purpose, technology, and wellness, and the impact when they are absent. What struck me wasn't just the themes themselves, it was how tightly connected they are. When communication breaks down, trust erodes. When leaders don't adapt during disruption, people feel unanchored. When innovation is rushed or ignored entirely, systems stagnate. And when wellness is treated as optional, burnout quietly fills the gap. This season reminded me that growth doesn't always come from big moments. Often it starts with awareness, simply noticing what keeps resurfacing. For example, I noticed that in many of these moments, the issue wasn't capability. People knew what to do. They were competent, experienced, prepared. What was missing was space. Space to process change. Space to ask questions without fear. Space to be human in systems that reward certainty and speed. That pattern didn't announce itself loudly. It showed up quietly, consistently. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop seeing it. And that brings us to the reckoning. When leaders don't pause, urgency becomes the default setting. We react instead of lead. We push through instead of reflecting. We stay busy, but increasingly disconnected. Burnout doesn't usually arrive all at once. It builds quietly through unspoken stress, unresolved tension, and leadership moments that pass without acknowledgement. When reflection is absent, silence starts to lead by default. Decisions are made without clarity, and teams begin to feel unseen, even when systems appear to be running efficiently. When leaders don't pause, they often miss what most needs attention. Early signs of fatigue, subtle breakdowns in communication, opportunities for meaningful, not performative, innovation. Over time, trust thins, engagement fades, and leaders begin carrying weight they were never meant to hold alone. In healthcare and systems leadership, that cost shows up as decision fatigue, disengaged teams, and leaders stretched beyond sustainability. Pausing isn't a weakness, it's discipline. It's the moment where listening replaces speed and intention replaces reaction. And after that kind of reckoning, the instinct is often to look for answers, something to fix, something to resolve. But recentering asks something different of us. Recentering isn't about having answers. It's about grounding ourselves before moving forward. So instead of solutions, I want to offer a few questions. The kind you don't rush, the kind you sit with. What deserves your attention, not just your reaction? What does leadership look like when it's intentional, not driven by urgency? And what needs to change, not eventually, but before the next stretch begins? Not everything. Not all at once. Maybe one habit, one boundary, one pattern that no longer serves you or the people you lead. Recentering isn't about fixing, it's about creating space. For example, I've been asking myself, what am I carrying that was never mine alone to hold? Where have I confused responsibility with urgency? And what might shift if I allowed leadership to feel steadier, not heavier? Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from noticing what happens when we slow down. This pause isn't an ending. It's a transition. In the next episode, we'll continue the conversation, hearing from a leader operating at the intersection of expertise, real-world decision-making, and impact. And after that, we'll zoom out and ask what this season has meant and what it leaves us with as leaders. Sometimes growth doesn't come from momentum. It comes from the space between what has been and what's next. Thank you for taking this pause with me. If this episode resonated with you, sit with it or share it with someone who might need space to recenter. You can stay connected at fitbizsolutions.com or on social, Instagram at fitbiz.solutions, Facebook FitBiz Solutions, and YouTube FitBiz Solutions Media. New episodes drop every Thursday. Until then, honor the pause, lead with intention, and always keep asking, what's your take?